What was the final nail in the coffin that ended your relationship or marriage? Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Thanks. I went to a Mother's Day dinner full of women who told me I was doing a great job as a first-time mom. I realized there that everyone else could see my worth except my spouse. When I got home, I felt miserable as I approached our room where he was playing video games, the source of my neglect for years. I set the sleeping baby down so I could get ready for bed. I accidentally made a noise. She woke up crying. He got upset that I woke her because it disturbed his gaming. He was drunk, called me stupid and waved his hand in my face that it flicked my nose. I got upset and did it back. He got mad. I soothed the baby via breastfeeding. He got back on the game. I stared at him and couldn't find any love for him except for resentment. I looked down at my baby, our room, and really questioned my life. When I came to my sense, I decided I deserved more. The words "I want a divorce" slipped out. He made a scene, packed his bags, and we've been separated since. I'm much happier. My baby is healthy, happy, and we're co-parenting. He's still confused as to why I want the divorce. Of course, he told me if I ever cared about him I should unalive myself, so he had a story to attract better women. COVID had started, we were separated, and he would do nothing but call and emotion dump on me. I told him we needed a break, just 2 weeks, 'cause I couldn't keep doing this. Those 2 weeks without him taking up space in my head were absolutely wonderful. I realized I didn't want to emotionally could handle going back to him. I broke it off after the 2 weeks, and while I was upset while it was happening, I was so relieved when it was finally over. It wasn't the final nail, but it was the biggest nail. I tried to get past it, but I couldn't. Following on from that, it was getting angry with me when I nearly drowned and being the only person not to check I was okay when the July 7th bombings happened in London. It was so clear that he didn't care at all. When I realized he had no spine or control of his own life. If you asked him about his future, he'd say, "I don't know, but my parents want." If his brother asked him to game together when we were spending time together, he'd say, "I just don't like saying no to him." I told him for months to make a reservation to move furniture out of our apartment. He said he'd do it. I asked him a week prior to move out if he made the reservation. "Oh, I forgot. We'll figure it out." He spent the majority of the time gaming while I was getting calls from the landlord and agent trying to find a solution. When I asked him if he signed the graduation form so he could actually graduate college. Wait, what? I didn't know there was a form. That with gaslighting, his addiction to weed, vaping if he didn't smoke or vape once a day, he'd be in a shit mood, and the cheating at the end, I finally had enough and got the hell out. Wasted 3 years of my college experience on an asshole. In one of my previous relationships, it was the lack of affection when we were together. It felt that we are not even friends, albeit in a relationship. He was a very cold person. I am very happy now to be separated from him. I broke my ankle in 2 weeks and he got mad at me, so he left me outside my apartment building at night knowing I couldn't open the doors. Then he didn't come home for 3 days and I found out he downloaded Hinge while drunk. Unfortunately, he's still staying with me because I can't take care of my dog while injured. I can't wait to literally walk away from this. We had lots of fights over it. I told him 1,000 times that he was not to say it in front of me or the kids. He got in the car, Bianca was on, he told me to turn that shit off, and I lost my shit and yelled at him. He told me he wanted to find someone who shared his values and I invited him to GTFO and go find someone else then. I didn't think he would, but he did. Yay. He tried to come back 2 weeks later, but I had had enough of his abusive, racist, lying mofo. Shopping, cooking, learning to cook, dishes, any cleaning, laundry, etc. He never did anything. He'd offer to do something but only if I reminded him, which just put the mental load on me too. He was always too tired. He worked a long shift, his job was super hard, he made more money than me, therefore, one, should do all the household stuff. Just excuse after excuse to be lazy. I basically felt like his mommy. Made me physically cringe if he tried to touch me. Anyway, COVID hit. He was laid off work. My hours at work increased. I was working crazy hours making great cash and he was home. He continued to do absolutely nothing. I'd work a 17-hour shift to come home to our place looking trashed, and I'd spend an hour doing dishes and laundry. Him having zero excuses to not do anything quickly sealed the deal. He'd call me while I was at work and whine, "I'm hungry, I don't feel like making food, can you bring me some too?" I snapped pretty quick. He knew he wasn't allowed to drive it because he was constantly on benzos. This was after years of his drug problems, mooching off of me, just being an unsupportive dead weight of a partner. When he left for work the next day, I wrote him a note and just left. It was the most freeing experience of my life. 6 years later, I've still never seen him again. Good riddance. After a year of very clearly communicating that I would like more even conversation, all of our time spent together was me asking him about his thoughts, experiences, feelings with no reciprocation. For him to plan activities I put together and executed everything we did together. And for him to communicate proactively about when we would see each other, and nothing changing for longer than a week. The last time I saw him, I realized he had asked me exactly one question over the 2 days we spent together, and interrupted me 2 words into my answer. I was done after that lull. Not showing up for our baby's birth when I went into premature labor because we fought the evening before and he was pissed. He thought I was lying to get his attention lol. 2 days ago. He cheated and I forgave. He cheated and I forgave. He cheated and I didn't know. Then I kissed a woman and I left. He remains confused. It's been over 30 years. In a previous relationship he had been lying about his expenses, and he finally admitted to being in 100K debt to people he shouldn't be in debt with. Thank goodness we weren't married. I packed and moved states when I found out. Wasn't the sole reason, but when I first knew it was over. When my favorite grandpa died unexpectedly, and I felt true grief for the first time. I realized I didn't feel 1/10 of that love towards my ex-husband at the time. Almost 15 years. I moved to Co in 2013. He was supposed to move with me. We were already long distance as it was, but Skyped every day. One thing after another with his family, illegal immigrants, and same with mine, going back and forth to visit, people getting sick, etc. He never ended up moving out here, and missed my mom's funeral. That should have been when I ended things but didn't. The cards dried up, flowers dried up, quit calling me beautiful every day. Obviously, when COVID happened, I sarcastically thought, wow, this is great for him, because now he doesn't have to come up with an excuse as to why he won't come out here. He got progressively meaner. Here I was working from home and being the most accessible I'd ever been, and he barely made time to hang out with me. I'd have to beg. His days off were during the weekday, so when we went back to office, I tried to do my WFH on days he was off. Hardly ever got to spend any time. The nicest he had been to me this entire time was when my wisdom teeth came out and I talked funny. I had tried to leave several times, but he would threaten suicide. That irked me because my mom used to do that gaslighting shit. And obviously, what's the point in being together if we're not together? But he wouldn't let me leave. Finally, the vibes were off again, and he went to the gym for 3 hours knowing I was on my way home. It was 8 p.m. MST, 9 p.m. CST for him. So he doesn't come on until 4 hours later because has to take a shower. I felt in my gut for a while I was being cheated on and thought no way someone who works for a moving company needs to go to the gym for 3 hours after working all day, after getting off at like 9 p.m. So I left on to 6ths. I wasn't being loved how I needed to be loved and asked to be loved. Trigger warning for racism. During 2020 he started going on about how George Floyd deserved it. I'm WOC by the way, he was white. I just was like, nothing is ever going to make you respect me at this point. The light bulb incident. And I mean that literally. I asked him to change a light bulb for me, and the domino effect that followed led me to realize that I simply could not be married to him any longer. My divorce was finalized today. When I called him out on his behavior, he got incredibly nasty and said some really hurtful things. Blocked his number straight away. The next day he leaves a voicemail saying he didn't mean any of it, and could I forgive him because it would make him feel better. PFFT, no way am I forgiving him. How they treated our child. He was never there when I needed him. It always took me threatening to leave before he'd make amends. In the end, I carried him and his PTSD until I broke to the point of finally realizing I'd be better off alone. He begged. He swore he couldn't live without me. A year later he was happily seeing someone else. 3 years on I still carry some scars, although improving all the time. After we moved in together he suddenly became a totally different person. Didn't support me through my PhD in a new city, in a different country where he is from, treated me like I was undergrad first year while he never went to uni, and couldn't understand the burden of PhD. He'd snap at me for things like me asking if he took an umbrella with him on a day when it was supposed to rain in the evening. Then I found love letters from women, one of them claiming that had been dating. He started gaslighting me, telling me the woman was crazy, and that I'm the bad guy for looking through his shit. He made me sleep on the floor in front of the entrance door as punishment. IDKY I tolerated that, probably CZ I was abroad, broke, didn't have anyone I could move in with, and I loved him. Fast forward 3 years, we had stopped having sex. I found a dating app on his phone. He denied using it, said he was just looking. But he also didn't agree to show me if he actually did or didn't use it. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and forget about it. A month later, he proposed we buy a house together. We looked at a couple, they were nice. When we talked about the loan, he said I should give him $10,000, but my name won't be anywhere on the loan. That made me think. He also told me I'm overly emotional and that's the root of our problems. So I started therapy. Only then did I realize that I should break up. We had a fight one day. I don't even remember what started it, something mundane we thought a lot. He said he wants to break up when I reminded him about how he was using dating apps, and without skipping a beat I told me that yeah, me too. I think he was taken aback, because prior to that I'd always beg for him not to break up with me. A week before I'd be moving out, he had left his phone unlocked, so I went through it. Not proud to have done this, but it proved that I wasn't mad. He was talking to lots of women for months, telling them he was single for years, etc. This is the man who said he wanted to buy a house with me only a couple of months ago. When I confronted him, he beat me badly for looking in his phone. LMAO. We argued all night. It got even worse. Him telling me I'm not trustworthy, blah blah. I left in the morning after he went to work and never saw him again. I'm glad he didn't show up just as we had agreed when I was packing. It'll be 2 years in June, and I hear he's already married to someone else. I wish him only misery for the rest of his life. It was a big deal, both because of the cheating and because his drinking had been getting worse over the course of our relationship. He was a different person when he was drunk, and that was kinda the problem. I didn't know who I was going to come home to on any given night. After I'd broken up with him, he started going to therapy for his drinking and the underlying issues that caused it. I honestly wish it hadn't taken him as long as it did to do that, because I'd been begging him to go for months before I finally broke up with him.